Wednesday's lesson, 12:17. Then the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. What does this mean? Dragon against Satan. Who's the woman? It's the church, or the people of God, those loyal to him. What kind of war? He's making war. Is it primarily a physical war, or is it primarily spiritual war, attacking their minds? Spiritual war, primarily. Who are the rest of her offspring? Well, those are sometimes referred to as the remnant, right? They are identified with two identifiers. Obey the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. Let's examine those. What does it mean to obey the commandments? It's really very simple. Live in harmony with God's design laws. The law of love, the law of liberty, the law of truth. So if you love others, then if you love God with all your heart, that's the first 4 of the 10. If you love others, that's the last one. So it's really having a heart that now operates on the principles of love, other-centeredness. That's living in harmony with the commandments. The only ones who can do this are those who've had their hearts changed such that they do not love their life so much as to shrink from death, Revelation 12:11. They're the only ones who can do it. Consider for a moment, I've got some examples of applying that. We don't have time to apply that principle and what it would look like in action because we're running late.
That is not what we have been taught.
I know. I know it. So, well, maybe I should say a couple of these then. What's the righteous look like? Those who would be part of that group, they're brought before a council and told that when the music plays, they must bow to a golden idol or be thrown in a fiery furnace. How do the righteous respond?
I will not bow.
That won't bow. That's an easy one, guys. That was a fluff question for you guys. I knew you'd get it. Okay. How about they are told that if they work on a certain day of the week, they will be imprisoned, say Friday or Sunday. If you work on Friday or Sunday, you're going to be imprisoned. How do the righteous respond?
Long weekend.
Long weekend. That's right. There's nothing in the Scripture that says you have to work on those days. State can make. In fact, there are federal holidays now that we say, oh, everything's closed on these days, and we close businesses on these days. There's no evil in that. So you go ahead with that. But some people are conditioned. No, if the state says it, well, then I have to rebel against it. So I'm going to go out there and make sure everybody sees me working twice as hard on that day. What if you're told they must attend worship services on Sabbath, Saturday the Sabbath, and shut down all their businesses or be imprisoned? How about if we say everybody must be baptized into Jesus Christ or be imprisoned? You see, what I'm trying to show you is violations of God's law are the methods used. And you can do a biblical truth with Satan's methods of coercion and force, and you're violating God's law. That's the point I wanted you to see. Okay, God's laws are design laws presenting truth in love, leaving others free. Any religious laws that are matters of conscience in which we enforce and coerce people, this is part of the beastly system. No one can buy or sell. Coercion, economic sanctions, unless you do what we say. The lesson says the main issue at the end of time is one of worship. Is it really primarily about forms of worship? Is that what you think it's about? Which day you go to church on, how you're baptized, how you take communion, or the God whom you're worshiping? Are you worshiping a God who Jesus revealed, or are you worshiping an imperial dictator? So, and let's read the last paragraph. It says, also the end-time remnant, second characteristic is that they have the testimony of Jesus, which Revelation 19 says explains is the spirit of prophecy. But comparing this verse with Revelation 22:9, we see that John's brethren who have the testimony of Jesus are prophets. Therefore, the testimony of Jesus refers to Jesus testifying to the truth through his prophets, just as he did through John. Revelation shows that at the end of time, God's people will have the spirit of prophecy in their midst to guide them through those difficult times, as Satan will try to make every effort to deceive and destroy them. As Adventists, we have been given the gift of prophetic insight in the ministries and writings of Ellen White. Okay, guys. Let's just assume for a moment, and we won't argue, there's a lot of argument and debate, was she a prophet, was she not a prophet, and just assume for a moment she was. Just make the assumption. She had the gift of prophecy. That would mean that within the Adventist organization, we have the writings of a dead prophet. If she were, right? We agree with that?
Yes.
What is the Bible?
Living Word.
But they're the writings of dead prophets. So anybody who professes the Bible and follows it also have the writings of dead prophets. Because we have writings of a dead prophet, does that mean we have a prophet living among us to guide us? As the lesson suggested, that these people will have a prophet among them to guide them. We don't have one, guys. Even if she did have the gift, it's the writings of a dead prophet. I'm going to suggest it doesn't mean that at all. Do the remnant have something more than the writings of a dead prophet? The NIV says in this text they hold to the testimony of Jesus rather than they have the testimony of Jesus. They hold to the testimony of Jesus. If you read in other versions, in Revelation 19:10, it says the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. That's NIV. Here's the good news. For the truth that Jesus revealed is what inspires the prophets. That's what the testimony of Jesus is, the truth that inspired them. Or the New Century Version says, worship God because the message about Jesus is the spirit that gives all prophecy. So one view is that the remnant are those who obey all 10 commandments, including the Sabbath commandment, and have a historical person who is now deceased who possessed the gift of prophecy. Thus, the organization, the institution, becomes the remnant. Another view is that the remnant are those who live in harmony with God's design law in their lives, have the law written on their hearts and minds, give the same testimony about God that Jesus gave and all the prophets gave, because the truth of God is what inspires them and inspired the prophets. Thus, the group becomes the spokespersons for God, described in Revelation 7, represented by the 144,000 as the servants of God who are sealed, and the servants of God in Scripture are his prophets. Thus, the remnant group will have amongst them members of the 144,000 who have been so settled into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, they cannot be moved, and they give the same testimony in their words, in their deeds, in the way they live about God that Jesus gave, and they live in harmony with God's design law, and they are living witnesses at the end of time, to which the great multitude respond and are saved.
Amen. You got it.
Then let me ask you in closing, could there be a people who obey the Sabbath commandment, who are members of an institutional church that has a deceased prophet in that institution, yet those individual people do not love others, have not been reborn, and are not like Jesus in character?
There already has been.
Well, but I'm talking today.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? But yet they claim they're part of the remnant because they're part of the institution. Okay, I want you to break free from this idea of institutional loyalty and identity. It makes you part of the remnant. It's character transformation, being like Christ, giving the testimony about God that Jesus gave, living in harmony with design laws. Now, have I just attacked any institution? I have not attacked an institution. I have not diminished an institution. I have merely focused the reality of God's plan of salvation to where it's always been, healing the hearts and minds of people to be like Jesus. That's what it's always been. Gracious Father in heaven,